So I'm back for Top 50 because it's an initiative that I'm doing every month. And the goal is to really focus in on generating 86 transactions from 50 people. Talking to them 1 hour a day. And so what does that really look like? And how do you make those meaningful conversations? And I was listening to a coach who really works the top 50, and she talks about gardening and how do you plant the seeds in order for your garden to grow to 86 transactions. And we've all heard of Marguerite's amazing referral story with Linda Buckmaster, right, Marguerite? And that's an amazing thought process. And it's really, how do we as agents develop 50 people that are real advocates for our business so that you can build a database that brings in 86 transactions? And what does that look like for you? I think it's important just to think through, how do you stay top of mind and organized around that? And one of the ways that I talk about it is through something called the Top 50 list. So I'm going to share my screen because it's the new year. Oh, can somebody allow me to share screen, Marguerite? Because it's the way you have to track, you have to take a look at what you're doing every month and how you're following up with people, right? Because how you follow up with them and how you connect with them will determine how effective you are in your business. Can I share? Yes? Yeah. Oh, cool. So this is my top 50 and what's happening in 2024. So there's 50 people on this list, right? And every month, and I've been reaching out to them. So it all started, January is in my opinion, like a freebie or a giveaway month, because you can just reach out and say, everybody, happy New Year, and everybody's receptive to that. And I use Canva, and I like to do GIFs. I started doing it for families and their birthdays, and everybody loves it. So I pulled one together for my family this year, and then I shared it with my top 50. And from that top 50, we're beginning to have those conversations. So we're at the end of the second week of the month. And so the goal is to have contacted 25 people. So I'm probably down to about row 22. So I have a little bit to do. And then the people who I have not reached out to yet still have that holiday gift. So it's the least effective communication, but I've tagged it for everybody because I know I've reached out to them for something. And then I move up the communication ladder, going from just a holiday gift. Did we have a text conversation? Was I able to up that to a call, or maybe even to a face-to-face? So out of all these people, I've been able to have one face-to-face conversation, 2 text conversations, and for 4, 5, 6, it looks like 2, 4, 6, 7 phone calls. And out of that, the question is, how many referrals have I been able to generate out of that? And so far this month, when I look at my top 50 list, I have generated 1 referral, right? And actually the gross volume is going to be a little bit bigger than that, but that's 1 referral coming out. And out of this, I know I'm getting 2 more referrals that are coming to me this week from this concept, from this idea. And the idea is to, every month, you're taking a look at this and you're saying, okay, Curdy Barnett, right? I've touched him, right? And so I'm going to know how many times I've touched him over the course of the year, right? And I also write notes. It can be your CRM. I do use KV4 as my CRM, so all my notes are there. However, I am looking at this every month and I say, oh, Hardy's in credit. So it's really easy for me to reach out, touch him, have a simple conversation with him, and then just ask him, how's it going with his credit? Does he need any assistance along those lines? And that kind of a thing. So I think it's really important to focus in on how we're touching our top 50 in a meaningful way, right? And one of the ways that we can do that is using our telephones, right? Our telephones have all of our contacts, but what if we have a contact that we're unsure about? And I think when you pull your list together, sometimes we're looking at people and who they know, right? And focusing in on their sphere. And it's become really clear to me that the best lists that happen, the best lists that work on this initiative are the ones that really focus in on the people that they like, right? The people that they want to talk to. And then the question is, how do you talk to your top 50? And there are 5 steps that really go into the concept of working with your referrals in order to generate your 86 transactions, right? And the first one is to have an introduction and a reason to call. Then you use the Ford technique, right? You ask for the referral, you teach somebody what is a great referral, and then you send a thank you card and a gift. And it doesn't all happen at once. It happens over a period of time, and you can track that in your top 50 tracker. So that's the thought process. What are people doing? Can anybody share what they're doing with their spheres in order to bring about generating referrals, since that's what we're talking about today? Anybody have any thoughts?
So I have my referral reward program that I do. Where when somebody does send me a referral, I'll send them a note with a little gift card, or depending on how many referrals they send, I'll send different gift cards of varying amounts or ideas or things like that. So I send that out to the person who referred them, thanking them for their referral.
That's awesome. And Marguerite, when you're chatting with people and you're having a conversation with them, how do you walk them into the concept of sharing referrals with you, maybe just one annually?
Typically, what I will say when we do the initial client appointment is, as I'm going through all that we're going to do for them, and I say, just so I get compensated in 2 ways. I get compensated not only by the seller, for example, if they're a buyer that may offer a commission. Of course, that language might change now with the lawsuits, but who offers a commission. And then I also get compensated by your referrals. My business is built on referrals, and I count on people like you to send me people like that are thinking about buying or selling a home.
So I love that thought. And how do you get your team to have that conversation with their spheres? Like, how do you motivate them or share with them the motivation to be able to handle that?
The biggest reason is when you look at what conversion rates are, right? So you guys, if you know anything about conversion rates, anything that comes from advertising, the conversion rate is typically 100 to 1 or more. Anything that comes from a business contact, your lender, your financial advisors, your CPAs, people like that, the conversion rate is typically 10 to 1. But people that are in your database, the conversion rate is 3 to 1. And there's this little thing called your reticular activator that heightens the awareness of what's going on around you, right? As soon as people start thinking about buying or selling a home, all kinds of stuff comes up that is related to real estate. All of a sudden they notice signs in the yard they didn't notice before. They're sitting in a restaurant and 2 tables down, somebody's talking about selling their home and their ears pop up. And I explained this part to them as well. So just keep in mind, when you are now all of a sudden hearing all this stuff about real estate, if you come across somebody who's looking to buy or sell a home, I'd appreciate it if you'd send them my way.
So I love that thought. But what if I have somebody that I really enjoy? Let's say I've never done a transaction with them, but they're a really good friend of mine, but I've lost touch with them, right? How do I re-engage, or how do agents re-engage with people that they know and trust, and frankly know and trust them back, and could develop a relationship with them?
I think that you first always have to focus on the relationship first, right? So that means that it's going to be important to reach out to them, connect with them. How's life? What's going on? Following, like you said, the Ford script, right? Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Getting to know them. But if I were to call you and I hadn't talked to you in 2 years and I said, "Hi, Vilija, it's Marguerite. Hey, do you know anybody who's thinking about buying or selling a home?" Like, you wouldn't take my call again. It's really important that you're building that relationship. But many times by the end of the conversation, we've been talking for 10, 15 minutes, talking about their neighborhood, things like that. And somebody took over the screen here somehow. Just a minute. Get that person. What I will do is by the end of the conversation, I'll say, hey, by the way, if anybody in this particular area, or if there's anybody that I can help, I would love to chat with them. So I'm always adding it or weaving it into the conversation, right? But I'm not necessarily making it all about buying and selling a home. I'm just trying to really build that relationship with them.
And what about consistency? How do agents stay consistent with their conversation? Because it's not just once. Just because you've shared with somebody that you're in real estate and that you want to help them or their neighbors or their colleagues or their friends or their family with real estate, doesn't mean that you're going to be top of mind. So what are some of the tips and tricks that you recommend in order to stay top of mind with your sphere of influence?
I'll tell you, the best thing you can do is always do mail, call, visit, right? So good old fashioned snail mail still works. You should have a database where you're tracking this. And when you send stuff, I still send out good old fashioned snail mail, my little letter of the heart, right? Call, what can you do to call, check in? Maybe you call them quarterly, semi-annually, depending on what the status is of them. And third, visit. You can either do pop buys if you're in an area you can't do pop buys. Maybe you can do client events. Maybe you can say, hey, I'd love to hop on a Zoom call and we can talk about what your goals are. Now you can even do Zoom meetings. You can do home buyer workshops via Zoom, home seller workshops via Zoom, but always have something you're inviting them to, whether that's your personal event or you're buddying up with somebody else. I know somebody was doing recently they did a whole Zoom class on how to get your trust put into place, right? Wills and trusts, which was great. You could do client events like I do. I do summer parties, holiday parties, Easter parties, whatever. You could get involved in events at your church, your charity, whatever that is, you can create events. So mail, good old fashioned snail mail. You can email too, but I find people aren't reading email hardly anymore. It could even consist of a text. So you can mail, snail mail, email, text. You can pick up the good old fashioned phone, right? And then visit. But that's all part of a marketing plan. And I just did I think I just did a Tuesday tune-up on that not too long ago, but I'm recording it. So I'm putting it in the process of putting together a real estate resource package, which will be a package of all my checklists and forms that I use. So stay on my list. That'll be coming out here in the next few weeks. But in there is a marketing calendar. So you can actually create your marketing calendar for the year. What are you going to do every month for the year? What are you going to do with your database? What are you going to do with your business connections? What are you going to do for advertising? And what are you going to do in each of those areas each month in the next 12 months?
So now that it's January, what do you recommend that agents really focus in on for first quarter?
In this first quarter, I would be talking to people about business planning. If they have a business, you could even take the information, train them on business planning. You could be talking about goal setting, vision boards. Now's the time for people to start getting pre-approved, to get their ducks in a row if they're thinking about buying, right? It's a perfect time to connect with your lender and just talk about your financial situation. Maybe you're not ready to buy and maybe you won't even be ready this year, but we can at least make a game plan so that we have an idea of when that is and what we can do to make that happen for you.
That's awesome. And as you're working with people and that conversation grows into your second conversation, how important is tracking this in your database? Like, how can you talk to agents or how do you teach agents that the database, your $6 million database conversation, right? How do you translate that into agents actually communicating their thoughts and their notes on their different clients and things like that?
Well, a couple of things. You have to remember that in this business, you have two choices in how you run your business. You can be proactive or reactive, right? Mm-hmm. Reactive means you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs waiting for business to come at you, which is why about 40 to 50% of the agents in the current market are not going to make it, right? Proactive means what are you doing to be proactive to stay in conversation with the people in your database so that when the time comes, you're who they call. If you do not have a database, it's the most valuable thing you own. And how much better does it sound the next time I call you, when I call Vilija and I say, hey, Vilija, it's been a while since we talked, but gosh, last time I talked, one of your kids was heading off to college, right? Now she feels like I've listened to her. She knows. And so I might take that conversation to say, hey, how many more you still got at home? Are you thinking about staying there? Are you thinking about downsizing? Like, those are things you could carry that conversation into, right? But if I don't have the notes, I always say my brain is for processing, not storage. I'm not going to remember. What I might, maybe, but odds are not high that I'm going to remember a conversation I might have had with Vilija 6 months ago. And if you can, every time you talk to him, you set a reminder for the next call. So I hang up the phone with her, and what is the next step from hanging up with her? Did she say I should call her in a couple months? Did she say, don't ever call me again? Did she say, hey, I'm not going to be ready until my second child heads off to college? That's going to be in another year or so. To set a step, what is the next step that is going to happen? Every time you talk to somebody, move it to that next step. Either set a follow-up appointment or anything that you can do, but there should always be moving forward.
That's awesome. And you make a good point, because we're always looking for date-specific subjects to look out for. What's important to them that we can hook onto for the season. So it's January, and we have everybody should have a little bit of a plan of how they want to communicate with at least 50 people. Some people say I have 600 Christmas cards that I sent out, which is awesome, but it's really hard to stay in contact with 600 people every month, right? Where it's much easier to stay in contact with 50 people every month, moving them through the process of getting to know you again, trusting you again, and then being brave enough to share, oh, my neighbor's moving. I think that you'd be a great connection for them during this step in their lives. That's awesome. And it's all about building that garden, right? It's all about building that garden of referrals for agents in that way. And you make a good point earlier, Marguerite, about new agents. Or just agents in general, right? Being proactive versus reactive. Proactive agents are making those calls and following up and moving forward through their contacts and their databases, right? Using their phones and things like that to update what it is that they're trying to do and what they're doing. Marguerite, what is your team doing in the January to touch your sphere?
Honestly, right now we're on the phones. We're nonstop, just picking up the phone and calling and talking to people. So I think that's priority. I sent out my email newsletter at the beginning of the month. I'll be sending out my snail mail newsletter this week. And we are having a vision board making party
Now, is
with
this for
my
agents
lender.
only, or is it with everybody?
It's for everybody. Yep. And we're doing that next week. I'm doing that with my lender, Shannon. Those are the things that we're doing right now in the month of January.
That's awesome. And then from that, what are you inviting them to in February, for February? So they come and then you're like, oh, join us in February. What is it how are you taking these people to stay with you throughout the year?
I don't have an event planned yet for February, but we do our Easter event towards the end of March or beginning of April. I'm not sure exactly what date Easter is this year. So that will likely be the next big event we're inviting to.
That's awesome. And that's where you do your eggs. That's super cool. That's a fun thought process.
Easter bunny.
So that's awesome. And then how do you work with how do your agents participate in all of this? Are they on their own? Do they do it together as a group? What is it that you try to
They do both. I encourage them always to participate in anything that we do, because it's great to pool resources. If you're an agent in my market, in my area, you're most definitely welcome to join into any party I have. We had our Christmas party, and we probably 25% of the people that were there were agents and people that I know. So people have that choice. They can either participate or they can do their own events.
That's awesome. And how do you teach people to give you referrals?
It starts right out of the gate, right? Like at the very initial appointment, it starts out of the gate in saying my business is a result of referrals from working with great people like you. When you meet somebody or come across somebody, I'd appreciate if you could send them my way. In that way, it helps me avoid spending lots of money on advertising and marketing, and I can focus on doing great stuff for my clients.
That's awesome. And then do you always follow up by sending them a thank you card and a gift?
Most of the time, I always send a thank you card. Sometimes I send a gift. I use send out cards a lot, so it's easy. But yes, I usually will follow up. If it's a listing appointment or a buyer appointment, like I just had a listing appointment last night and I'm writing out my little thank you card. I wrote a book, so I send my book out many times or different things like that.
That's awesome. And how do you track your referrals?
So I track them in my database. So I use a program called All Clients where I'm able to actually track all of the referrals, but you can do that however, in whatever database program you have. I used to do it on an Excel spreadsheet. However that is, whatever that looks like, I encourage you to create a system to be able to track them.
So I love that thought. Those are my thoughts on the top 50. I really enjoy the program. I think it's very doable for most agents, right? Working through and moving forward 50 people to generate 86 transactions in 1 hour a day. And those are some of the tips and tricks for January to get going in 2024.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions about that or anything you want to add to it? Because they're all muted. Quiet today. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again on Tuesday Tune-Ups. We do this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. You're welcome to join us and invite guests. Feel free to bring people along. It's open to anybody with any company. So we usually decide the topic unless you have ideas or suggestions. We usually decide the topic each week based on the feedback from what we get. So if you want to hear about anything in particular next week, please let me know. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Vilija, for your time and energy. We appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.